Hi, Sadaf.
Iggy,
I'm good, and
how are
you?
you? I'm good as well. I'm good.
Perfect. I
I'm
think the
good.
technology is working here.
Yeah,
Seamlessly,
seems so.
yes. And this conversation is long overdue.
Oh man, really long overdue. And clearly we had to do it once we were out of Unilever and having our own separate thing.
No, exactly. I think what was the last time that we spoke was what 2019, before the pandemic, I believe.
Yes, before COVID, a lot has changed. The whole definition of this topic has changed, I
No,
think.
exactly. So maybe we can provide some context for everyone on why we decided to have this conversation. I think we used
Yeah,
to have this conversation over fish and chips during lunch in London at the Unilever office. And those one-on-one conversations, and many times shared with many other people in our team, they were very insightful, and they
mm,
managed and they helped us a lot to digest the what is it to lead a life in
mm,
the corporate world, make sense of our lives in there, on what is leadership, what is not, what matters in that life, what doesn't.
mm,
And I think for everyone that is joining us right now, Sadaf and I, we felt, you know what, we really enjoyed those conversations at that time. But we felt that it was like a waste if we didn't share those questions and
yeah,
those insights with everyone else. Not
yeah,
because there's wisdom we have to share, more wisdom than anyone else, is basically because we are all in the same mess. And I think we realize that many people share the same questions. So maybe by socializing those questions with everyone else in social media like Instagram or LinkedIn or on other places, people can join our questioning, our
yeah.
interrogations, and can also help us finding the answers or finding all the questions, right?
Yeah, and I think the conversations that we used to have about leadership, what they were helping us to do was it was kind of like counseling each other while you're having those conversations because you tend to realize that more we were having the conversation, it was becoming, I would say, more palatable to survive a corporate environment. And I think also at the same time you realize, there are more people out there who are asking all these questions. Are we so many? If we're so many, then why isn't it being talked about enough? And for me, while we had those conversations, for me, a trigger was also, I think once when we decided to do this was an article that this gentleman wrote, Michael Smith, about quiet confidence, and how there is an alternative leadership style out there. And I think reading it, you realize, there is another way, another way that could be more authentic, another definition of what leadership is. So I think these questions started coming in, and I think I'm glad, Guy, that you pushed me to do this. So yeah, I'm looking forward
There's
to the
so much you can
conversation.
share. I think there are many nuggets you can share with everyone here. And then when we used to work together, you were a source of wisdom for me. I learned a lot from you, and you know the questions you have, the values you hold, the I think that are can be object of many lives like this one, but this one is going to be focused on leadership, and it's perhaps the um, a word that is taken for granted, as everyone understands what it is, what it is for. There are 10,000 books written about it.
Hmm.
It is, one of the terms and the concepts that it most used in our lives in the corporate world. But I'd like to start our conversation a very naive approach to it. So maybe start asking, what is leadership? What is a in your point of view?
Hmm. So I think for me, leadership is generally needed just to give a sense of a direction, and not just to give a direction, but also at the same time, leadership is when you give an environment, in which people collectively grow, and during that growth, they're kind of reaching their goal. So it's not just about pushing them to get there, but it's almost like a positive snowball effect in which they all get to grow together to get to the end result. So everybody benefits under the leadership umbrella. It's not just one person benefiting. That's what comes in my head. It's not the example of Mel Gibson standing in Braveheart and making a big compassionate speech and everybody's just blindly going to follow. I think that's a bit in the past. But in this case, I think leadership for me, it's an equal relationship actually. It's not a relationship of superiors.
It's interesting that you bring that, because it's above all a relationship between two people, or one and many, or many with many. I have been asking that question to myself as well, because when you go to LinkedIn or you go to bookshelves and in bookstores and so on and so forth, I think if you had to do a semiotic study of that, you're going to get this idea of the hero is the one above the many, this one person that holds the power, that holds the wisdom, holds the clarity and the truth and the direction about something, and everyone is following. But it's sort of every time I come across this kind of references, it's sort of cringe, because it assumes that there are certain people that hold the attributes of a leader, and others don't and cannot. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't intuitively doesn't feel right for me, because I do have the very genuine belief that there are as many leaders as inhabitants in the world. And if every single inhabitant in this planet were to behave like the stereotypical leader, I think we would have a problem, don't you?
I think that's a, there is a certain trend. Again, apologies if I'm bringing in movies again, but that's closest to it. If you now see, they're trying to debunk the myth of a superhero. So there's always this very dark backstory that they now bring in movies of a superhero, in which they show, again, vulnerability. Right? And I think we've been, the recent concepts of leadership, which come from people like Brene Brown in her book, vulnerability has become a key attribute of a leader if they want to come across as courageous. And that vulnerability also doesn't mean that you just break down in front of the whole team and say, yes, I don't know nothing. But it actually creates an environment in which you bring that barrier down and you invite from your team and more effective way of operating. So the vulnerability will help even them in participating. So I think there is that movement that is happening, but it's still not like a majority. It's still like voices here and there giving space. So yeah, I would like to see the movement in which all the introverts unite. But we don't need that. That would be counterintuitive to being an introvert.
And in the end of the day, as I reflect about this theme, when does it emerge the need for a leader? It's basically is when actually there are societies, there are more than one human being, and the more human beings you have to coordinate, the worse it is, so the more difficult it is for people to do that without having certain people playing certain roles in providing direction, providing clarity, providing inspiration, facilitating and coordinating. But I think the role that I connect the most is this role of the leader as a facilitator, and a facilitator of collective process. And that facilitation sometimes takes the shape of someone that goes to the whiteboard and dictates the direction and provide the clarity. And you know that I love a whiteboard.
That's the thought that came in my head. The whiteboard, Guy, mentor.
Exactly.
That's Guy.
And then you can imagine that during the pandemic without the whiteboard, I don't know.
How did you survive?
Yeah, there was nothing that I could do to compensate. Sometimes I would have a A4 piece of paper, would write stuff
Oh
there
my
and send
God.
pictures to the people I work with. Yeah, sometimes it's that, but I have learned that sometimes it's basically you hold the space and you are a listener, and then you are actively listening. And
Yeah.
as you play that role, encouraging other people to do the same and providing the space for other people to take the mic and talk.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes it is about asking questions, and it's about
Hmm.
probing. Sometimes it's about being a little
Hmm.
bit more assertive and provoking. And as you are doing that, you are leading because you are basically
Hmm.
facilitating the collective process of working together, right?
Hmm.
But I think we often mistake that with the idea of the leader being an authority, holding power,
Hmm.
holding the truth, holding all the things that other people don't have. And I think that's the big mistake. And then it comes, I think, the thing that we often discussed. I think having the values we hold and having the traits that we have as individuals, yourself and myself, is it possible for someone that doesn't embody those traits of the stereotypical hero leader to succeed? What is your point of view on that?
I think I want to also kind of bring in a point, Guy, before maybe can get connected to it, is that what I want to clarify is that the definition that we're kind of debating of a leader is not somebody, who can get off the hook in terms of decision making. Um, because in a corporate environment itself, you do have a lot of reportees and managers who expect the senior people to take decisions so that things can move forward. Yeah. Now, I think what we're not saying over here that that leader doesn't need to do that. That leader still has to do that. That is their responsibility to do so. However, I think the area that we're calling out over here is that stereotypical definition of a leader, in which case you come in full charge in the room, not giving space for people to participate. You might think you're doing some sort of a favor to them by kind of clarifying the objective of the meeting right up front. Yeah. However, you're setting the tone for the rest of the meeting and for the rest of the projects because you come in with full force and impact. Now, and the rest of the people with different personality types would be like, okay, it's their way or the highway. Like, they're not even asking me if my opinion matters. And that's where it kind of shuts off. That leader who's doing that, they might have all the good intentions. It's just that that's their personality. And I was reading this in this strength profiler thing. People who have this ability, it's good. They have a very strong intuition. They come in exactly, they know how to solve the problem. They give very clear direction to the team, a bit too clear, to be honest. However, what ends up happening is they go charging, but then they miss out on some key details of why some things might not happen,
Mm.
and eventually they don't. And that creates chaos later on because that person never gave any space. Versus you have those kind of leaders, the ones that I think I relate to the most and you relate to the most as well, is that um, the ones who listen first. Um, and it's also funny, I think humans are just generally very paranoid in nature, because when the leader comes in and say, you tell me, you're like,
What,
hey, why are
what
they
they're doing that is weird.
yeah, why are you doing that? Like, yeah, it's weird. Like, why are you putting me under the spot, right? There is that reaction as well. But I've seen that a common leader that you and I had, and I'm very sure she's listening in as well right now. When she joined the company, when she joined our team and Unilever, the first thing she did was just listen to like 30 people individually, one-on-one. She did one-on-ones with 30 people just to collect, to get a feel for what before she giving her opinion and point of view. Yeah. Similarly, we have the Microsoft head, Satya. His name is Satya. I can't remember his full name, but he did the same thing. Just listen, listen, listen. And that active listening is very difficult because humans are full of opinions itself. I think that is where the definition starts changing of what other options could be. And I just saw this one comment which I kind of like, the Ted Lasso example. That Ted Lasso is, and that's what it is. The conversation's changing because you have this person who's actually, the unconventional part is he's not even an expert in the topic, right? But he knows how to lead by just being very vulnerable and very human and
Yeah,
approachable.
and then at the end of the day, you know, there is no, you know, if we distill to what you said in the beginning, what leadership is basically the ability of holding relationships and establishing relationships. There is no way you can be successful in leading or creating leadership, relationships if you don't listen, if you don't empathize, and if you don't make yourself vulnerable. All those things they are needed in order to create a bond of trust and creating a connection with someone else in a different level. So that's I think in the end of the day. Otherwise, it feels like, okay, the new wave right now, it is vulnerable leaders, and then all of a sudden people will be using that as tools for, hey, I need to sort of now sort of come across as someone vulnerable so people can listen to me, but you're not really meaning that, and that can feel quite manipulative.
Yeah, and that's why the conversation has started circling a lot around authenticity. I think what we're propagating over here is whether you are this extremely charismatic, visibly leader, or whether you are the more grounded, taking your time, empathetic leader. Just be true to yourself is, I think, what the proposition is in this case. Because as soon as you start playing the game of manipulative empathy, like I think Kim Scott says, that is when you've actually now fallen for another trap. And people are not stupid. They understand and they can read what you're trying to do. But Guy, for you yourself, in some cases, people, it does end up feeling that, oh, they're really watching out for me. They're honestly trying to give me some feedback about how to improve. But actually, they might be playing a game. In those situations, how would you react, or what do you think is the watch out to get out of this?
No, I think it goes down again to this point of acknowledging we are all humans, and we need to figure out collectively how to live with each other. And at least in my case, is about sensing. Is about, you know, it is about rationalizing and trying to understand logically, but it's about sensing and feeling. I come across leaders that they were saying the right thing, they were using the right tools and asking the right questions, and they were coming across as if they were very human, but it didn't feel right for me. And I was in the very beginning very confused. I was puzzled. I left the conversation or the interaction feeling confused. Okay, he or she said X, Y, Z. It felt right. It's the right thing that a leader should have said, or and so on. But it didn't feel like that. And then the more you're exposed to those dissonances, the more you realize, and then you can actually start pinning down those ignorances. And the other way around is also true. There are leaders that don't need to say much in in order to convey a message, to influence, to inspire. That leader that you mentioned, for instance, was basically there listening and then paying attention and creating the space for you to do your own thing. But it didn't say much. It didn't say much. It just gave us the space, right? So my hunch is, yeah, follow your gut, follow your hunch, follow your senses, because if it's coherent, if it's authentic, you're gonna feel as such. If it's not the case, it's gonna feel like that person has been media trained, you know. It happened to me the other day. There was a leader of my organization, and the person came across so well, and then I turned to my colleague and said, but it feels like this person has been media trained to death, because this person is saying the right things, is sort of asking the right questions, but if you script it and it doesn't, in the end of the day, it may be effective for a short while, but it won't be enduring, and it won't really connect with people in a deeper way. And I like your point. I think Gaspar, he was making a comment, and of course with his CMI background, he talked about Netscope, and I like that, because what Netscope does is just a model that conveys the diversity of possibilities of human beings and how they can their characters, their personalities, and how they come to life in the world. And I think it's pretty much the same. I think the issue is, for a very long time, especially in our Western civilization, the models that have been predominant are the ones perhaps on the left-hand side of the map, all about me, about individual progress, and so on. Whilst I think now we see the emergence of the we kind of leaders. But also, if you think of, okay, what are the leaders that are really inspiring? The cliche, Martin Luther King, Buddha, Jesus Christ, and Gandhi, and all those sort of examples, they are all about the we. So there is actually almost like a paradox there. The leaders you admire are the ones that are really caring about the collective, and they are, I think they are real leaders in that sense, because in my point of view, leaders are about, they are facilitators of the collective processes, whilst actually the leaders in our world today that get the accolades, the attention, and the rewards are basically the ones that are about all me. And as I reflect about that, and I think out loud about that, that I was crazy enough to do a master in history when I was still working
yes,
in my
we remember.
evenings. And I was lucky to get a tutor that then oriented me on my final dissertation. But her specialty was the sort of the power structures and the institutions of the 4th century after, AD. Yeah. And it was interesting to study that period of history, because one of the insights I had, I said, oh my God, if I look at how the Roman Empire was structured and the institutions were organized, and the hierarchies and all of that, well, the company I work for is no different, right? We kept on reproducing the same structures and the same ways of getting organized. And that was very effective as a civilization to get where we are right now. But now, the problems that we are facing and the complexity of the problems we are facing, that model of organizing and that model, therefore, of leading is insufficient, right? There is no way we're going to get out of the mess we are in collectively from a social, environmental, economic perspective, unless we find different ways of relating to one another, to organizing each other, to working together. And therefore, I think we need more leaders that swing the pendulum towards the we. But we don't have many role models. We don't have many references. So how do how can we get out of this, and how can we then therefore create a new wave of leaders with those values?
I think one thing which we have to admit is that there are two parts which are realistic. One is that if you go by your authentic self, you don't want to play the visibility game, you don't want to go and advertise yourself in the organization that, oh, I'm doing this, my project did this, I did this, and etc. etc. The reality is that a corporate setup might not reward you. They might not punish you, but they might not reward you. And that's a reality. Yeah. However, I think what we're saying is that if they want to go for their style of leadership, which is more authentic, grounded, and who they are, they should go and pursue that. However, it might be more of a slow burn leadership style. In the current corporate environment, I think eventually the more of people out there do more of their authentic style of leadership, eventually there will be more awareness around it. Because even right now, this conversation, I couldn't imagine happening 10 years ago in this way. Because there was just one stereotypical way of being a leader, right? Versus right now that we're talking. So that and somebody even mentioned this, that how do we kind of then get out of it? Because the corporate game is there. The corporate game is a bit lazy because whatever they see, they will reward. Hence, I think the feedback as well that we sometimes end up giving to our reportees as well, we end up using these vague words like go create impact, go get exposure, you need more visibility. And the person with a completely opposite personality type is like, oh, are you asking me not to be authentic? And then we've confused them.
For a very long time, I was confused and completely almost schizophrenic because yes, of course, I had some little clarity about the values and my personality in the way that I feel comfortable being myself. But then you will remember some of those old Unilever competences like passion for growth. And then it's a very charged sort of definition, right? So how do you demonstrate that you are passionate? You need that passion needs to be visible, and therefore there are other attributes that I was given that feedback before. Yeah, it feels like you are not driven, or you're not as passionate because I'm not sort of emulating those traits and those behaviors of certain extrovert personalities. There's nothing wrong about that. It's just that these are the type of traits that end up being rewarded and recognized as passionate or driven, for instance. And they are effective in many different ways. But it doesn't mean that if you have an alternative way, you can be as effective, and in certain instances, even more effective, right? And there were many instances that I was doubting myself, and I was trying to become this other person I was not. And it is really exhausting. It is exhausting, but it's also on a physical way, but in an emotional way, because you are trying to be and behave like someone you are not. Yeah. I realized that, okay, there are actually different ways of doing that. As you said, it is a slow burn, and building relationships, you don't do that in a blink of an eye. You have that story of the little prince with the fox. You actually won't become friends with the fox like this. It's going to take a while, and it takes effort, it takes conversation, listening back and forth, and then the trust is built. It is a slow burn, and it's a slow burn as any other relationship. You don't become friends with anyone in a blink of an eye.
And I think that's the example for me that I think you are one of the examples in a way, because you have a certain, a very, whoever kind of interacts with you, I think after 15-20 minutes, it gets clear itself, and then what type of a person you are. And I think if you are able to succeed in the corporate environment, but you did it on your own terms without being forceful. I think that's the important thing, that you didn't have to fight the system. You were just very persistent. Um, and I think that persistence starts off with acceptance and self-awareness, um, of who you are and what your value system is, and then those are the red lines.
But I don't know if you remember, there was one moment that is very vivid for me. I was given the feedback, you need to be more assertive, and I think that feedback is spot on in many ways, and it's something that I continue to work on. But I took it wrong, and then I said, okay. So, and then there was a moment that I said, okay, I need to be more assertive with Sadaf. I don't know if you remember that.
Sadav is a fictional character.
and then then you said, who who is this person? Who is this person?
I
Suddenly,
know. I remember. I was like,
I don't recognize this person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, and I said, but what am I doing? Um, and and because I think I confused, uh, being assertive with being aggressive. And when I
Yes.
managed to decouple
Yes.
those two things, or being assertive and come across as someone driven and passionate, extrovert and so on,
Mm.
and I realized, no, actually not. I can be, perhaps there is an opportunity for me to be clearer, but that
Mm.
clarity can be communicated in so many different ways, and ways that feel true for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So, um, yeah, I think it has to do with the stage we are in humanity right now. I think someone is basically saying here, I think his dream.
Yeah.
What is your view on how
Agree.
to maintain your authenticity as a leader as things become more political and full of game of influences? Um, well, it depends. If the rules of the game are contrary to the values you have, you simply don't play the game. You play the game you want to play with that values. And if there's a cost for that, then I think you need to be open to let go. I think that's, at
Yeah.
least, is my perspective, Dream.
Yeah. Also, I think it's in our heads that there is a game and there are rules. It's not that. There is no game. You can make your own game. That's the environment. And you can make your own rules as well. And then you can make it, break it, whatever you want to do. It's this false sense, sort of a trap that we set ourselves up for, whereby we feel that it's very obvious the people who are going to go, and I think with men at least, they have an opportunity of going, connecting with the men in a very sociable way, and then for women leaders sometimes it becomes a bit of a constraint itself, and then those women are then forced to emulate traits of men, and they're like, and that creates more confusion. I think what I've seen so far is that you set your own rules, and your rules come from, you need to be very clear on your value system, and those are your rules. um, and once you're clear on your value system, then you will see that there is no game automatically. Um, and you don't have to go and actively fight the system. You'll have to be very persistently ensure that you are able to bring in your authentic self or your flavor of leadership into situations, but with the expectation that it might go against the majority sitting in the room. And like Guy is saying, and then be mentally prepared that it might not sit well with few people, but then be okay with it, because at least it sits well with you. At least you're able to go home and sleep at night
Yeah.
without thinking, bravo, Sadav, I played the game
But
so well.
and I suffered a lot because I was trying to play a different game with different rules, and as you said, you know, with the values that I was aware I had, and then expecting to have the reward on the other game. So for instance, why I'm not being promoted? Why I'm not given that project? Why I don't have attention? And
Yeah.
you know, until I realized, no, actually, I'm playing a different game. So I'm expecting the accolades and the rewards and scoring points in the other game is just played differently.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then it took me a while to be able to pull that apart. And I'm still pulling, huh? I'm still because
Hmm.
we are bombarded every
Hmm.
single day um, in conversations, in the coffee machine, in the corporate environment, in LinkedIn, everywhere. That what are the traits and the symbols of success? What successful leadership
Hmm.
is about, and
Hmm.
we don't really have time to digest and to question those symbols, and then we end up falling into the
Hmm.
trap of those, and don't
Hmm.
actually realize that, you know, there's an inherent disconnection between those and what we are seeking. So
Hmm.
uh, going inside ourselves and questioning what I really want, what I really value, what it really matters to me, what is important for me, and therefore what is my definition of success is extremely important in order to be able to process all that bombardment that you get every single day.
Yeah. Because I think that self-awareness of your boundaries is your personal filter. And that way, whatever bombardment is going to happen, you're able to filter the important from the unimportant. That's the only way to survive it. Otherwise, whatever somebody's going to tell you, go be assertive, you'll go and be assertive. Um, I myself have gone through this whereby I had to, and it's typical feedback that people with my personality are given. Sadaf, you need to be more visible. Okay, what do I do with that? Um, you have to make a presentation and you have to present, even though nobody's asking for that presentation, but still you have to present. And by the way, it has nothing to do with you, Angi, it's from the past. Um, and then even though my leader might be thinking they're doing some sort of a favor to me by giving me exposure opportunity, however, the way they're delivering it is making you feel exposed. That I'm not ready. This is not the way I want to do it. And I think it's that recognition, the responsibility of the leader to make sure that they read their team. They need to understand their team very well. And I think that's the time and effort that leaders are, they don't kind of, they don't take the time to truly understand their people as people. They're not just resources. And I think that word itself
Yeah.
kind of messes it up, right? They're not resources. They're people with emotions. There is no such thing as work-life balance. There is life, and work is part of it. They're giving their heart and soul to it. So if you're going to go and criticize their work or tell them to do something, they will take it personally. It will be, that's the reality of it. So then the question is, how do you make sure that you give them a safe space where they're able to share a side of your personality that the leader is able to read, and the leader should know that no, if I put Sadaf in this position is not going to be conducive to her development. So I need to find another alternative way to do it.
Interesting.
Um, and I think that for me is, I think, a key issue in people not taking time. So if there is an aspiring leader, a young leader, who's trying to figure out their leadership style, more than anything else, more than trying to figure out what type of a leader they want to eventually become, I think the only thing they should first and foremost do is figure out who they are as self-awareness, figure out their red lines, and the second thing is they should figure out who their people are
It
itself.
is interesting, this point you're making. And if you don't understand who you are, how you're gonna actually lead if you cannot even lead yourself. So and as you were describing that conflict, it feels like we're still behaving like we are in school, right? One way, the way those big corporations are organized is still mimicking the structures of the Roman institutions, the Roman Empire. And within those institutions, there are a number of kids running around seeking attention and then accolades from the teacher. I think we haven't matured, therefore. We are not growing up. So I think there are two big innovations that need to happen. I think on the institutional organizational level, because I think it's chicken and egg, huh? That's conversation.
Yeah.
The organizational culture and structure and ways of working, they are not conducive to certain leaders.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are certain leaders that can lead, in such a way that change the way the organization is set up. I think it's not either or, is both and. And that's basically the type of innovation we need in the world today to deal with the complexity that we are dealing with right now, with the problems that become more and more complex. We need organizational innovations and then leadership innovation. And that has to do with, I think, at an individual level, if we go to the individual level, not the organizational one, almost like an awakening in terms of self-awareness, of self-development, because unless that happens, that's basically what is happening in the big positions of power in the world, where there are psychopaths and sick people actually taking those positions. And why is it happening? It's because everyone is feeling insecure. Everyone is, the emotion that is basically circulating is fear. Those are the kind of leaders with the traits that can deal with that fear and manipulate that fear in such a way that people feel a little bit more secure. But that's not sustainable, as we can see with the like Trump, Bolsonaro in Brazil, and many other leaders, Erdogan in Turkey, and so moving from a place where when we are collectively together, what is holding us together is fear, to a place where what is actually holding us together is a different feeling of security, of trust. And then basically what is that glue is basically vulnerability. It is basically all the human traits that are common amongst all of us.
Yeah. And I think what we have to be aware of is that, we're kind of part of, I would say, older generation itself, versus Gen Z that is getting ready to take over. And I think the more and more the conversation, whether it is social structures, whether it is the products we create, whether it is the way we behave, whether it is about who we are, our self-identity, all of it has to do with transparency in information, being okay with showcasing who you are. So authenticity has become a very key attribute for Gen Z. Therefore, hence I would say the Gen Z, they're born with the special radar. They're able to pick it up very quickly when somebody is not being authentic. And and hence the leader, it becomes, even people who are going to manage them, it becomes even doubly important to first figure out who you are, and then at the same time give them the space so that they're able to express themselves. Otherwise, we'll have a bunch of very frustrated future managers and leaders who just will keep getting confused by, there's a corporate game, I have to play, that's the only way to win, and I don't want to do this, hence corporate life sucks, I'm leaving it, I prefer going for my side hustle. That's going to be the story, and we're going to lose talent.
Yeah, and we do need people in these organizations to change them and change the system as well. And I think it is interesting that you bring Gen Z, because we, in the work that we did on marketing when we were working for Hacker, we learned a lot about the sun girl, basically. Whilst in the past, life was about, okay, I have, my personal life or my professional life, and I have my passions, and they were two parallel lines, and they didn't actually in any shape or form. In this new generation that is, the Gen Z that you're mentioning, basically, those two lines, they blur, and there's no separation. And therefore, if you are someone playing a role in your personal life and then it is different at the workplace, it doesn't make any sense. And I think it's something that this generation is bringing, that is pretty inspiring for us. Yeah, we are multifaceted, and our personalities built layer over layer during the course of our lives. But there is an axis that sort of holds it all together. And if you manage to stay true to that axis, which is basically the values, your beliefs, your points of view, you are authentic. If in order to survive, you have to play these different roles, but that has nothing to do with this sort of holding axis and backbone, then I think there's a lot of suffering, because the energy that you need to have to hold, to keep that together, and playing those different roles in that way, I think it is incredible, and it's possible, and it's leading to the mental health crisis we are in, and burnout at the workplace, and so on.
I mean, there was this example which really made me realize that companies have to also let go of insecurity about their employees and resources. Because just telling people to list down what is their purpose, their personal purpose, is not enough. And the reason I say it is because then not giving them the opportunity to express their purpose or be able to fulfill their purpose is not going to help in the long term. And that doesn't mean that you put them on projects which might be related to that, this and that, so that, because the objective of all organizations is to retain people, hold on to them, not make them leave, especially key talent. However, this example I was reading of Google, I can't remember, I don't know how senior the person was, but he had an employee and he asked her, so what is your ultimate ambition, your development goal? And she thinks, and she's like, I eventually after 5 years want to have the same position as you. That's the usual reaction even I would have. Now this is where the magic comes, because the guy, the Google exec, he sensed, and that's important. He sensed that she's not being 100% truthful. Must be the body language, the way she said it, but he must know her enough to figure it out that she's not. And so he said, I don't think XYZ, you're being honest. Try again. Truly tell me what is it that you want to achieve after 5 years. And she starts off, I want to actually have my own farm where I have animals and some sustainable algae growing and some big fat strange dream. And the boss said perfect, and he took that dream and he calls it the dream conversation. He took that dream and he said, now let's break down what are the skills we will need to develop in Google for you so that you're able to successfully launch this business in the future. And then they kind of developed an 18-month development plan out of her dream itself. Now he could have thought, oh no, she's going to leave. I'm making a plan so that she eventually leaves and opens up her business. However, just imagine the reaction of the person that, oh, my own boss is helping me to create a plan. Who knows, she might just get motivated and say, I'm staying in this company forever. Right? So, and that just comes from a place of being okay. Don't treat them like resources. They're people with real dreams. Not everybody wants to become a VP, a chairman, a CEO, and etc. They might have something else going on in their heads. Give them the space and make a development plan. You don't want people to be in the company, in the same company for 20 years or 25 years. We know what happens to those people. They eventually become cynical. They come in the way. They don't want to do anything new because they just want to talk and give their opinion and their wisdom, which nobody's even asking for, right? So I think that part becomes quite critical of creating a development plan for your people that will truly help them to achieve their dream, not in a fuzzy roundabout way of so that they stay in the company.
Yeah, because I think there's wisdom there, an understanding from this particular manager or leader that it happens that we are together here in this organization called Google, where we have common objectives. So most of those are common, some of those are not. But how can we get the most out of this experience together that is conducive to the objectives of this particular organization, but that go beyond? And therefore, every single experience we have together, wherever we are, they are stepping stones for something bigger. They are stepping stones for the success of the organization itself, in a more limited manner, but as well to where we are heading as human beings. Hey, I like thinking about that. That very, very often the people I work with, I tend basically to ask those questions and say, okay, it's great. You are here working in hair care, and then let's grow the market share of hair care and then get P&G and all of that. But what else? What else? What else?
And I want to tell you this. This is something you did. I think you had asked me what do I think is a development area for me and whatnot. And I think I admitted it in front of you. I always had this issue in my head that maybe I'm not as creative as you are. I'm not able to kind of come up with 10 product concepts in like 30 minutes, which you could. And I was like, whoa, the speed at which he's able to churn out insight after insight, like I can never do that. And I always felt that I don't intuitively have that aesthetic thing which you would have. And it always was in my head that being a marketer, I kind of have to excel. Yes, there are things that I enjoyed more, which was strategy, thinking through analysis and etc. So I like the business part of my job more than this part because I always felt I was weak in it. However, you did ask me what is it that things that I enjoy doing and my passion. And during my conversation with you, I mentioned I like to draw and paint and whatever. And then you said, go do it. And when I started doing it, I realized, okay, so I realized I actually in a different way itself. So is this having obviously I had to admit my flaws, and B, you giving me the space to just go and discover. And I think in these conversations only a deeper relationship develops between the team. In these moments where people are willing to be vulnerable and the other person is not just going to hold it against you, but will actually help you to kind of see through it itself. Otherwise, if I would have been telling this to somebody else, not you, oh my God, I would have been sent to some workshop to figure out how to write a concept.
It's something that I learned from my mother, actually. I remember when I was 17, 18, and I was starting university. And I asked this very naive question. And I said, Mom, how do I become creative? I'm not creative. And then she said, of course you are. Everyone is. And then she gave me some pointers and books that she had, but also, let's research about it. Let's understand what is creativity about. And then I realized that creativity has to do with curiosity and has to do with really amplifying your repertoire. Because the more you do that, the more connections you can create. And therefore, if that's the case, anyone can do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember this, you telling me this story. I remember
That
this.
was the unlock for me. And therefore, uh, it needs to be connected with a passion point. You are only curious about something that you have a passion about. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and then you do have the passion on drawing. And then if I remember, for instance, very vividly as well, that video that you created for that innovation that we did, I think it's perhaps the
Mm.
most beautiful video I've ever seen, for conveying
Mm.
a concept and a
Mm.
proposition. Because it came from really within your passion about, the Muslim culture and all of that. You could see that coming across and coming through all that passion there.
Mm.
So I think therefore we can really shift this idea of the leader as a almost like a medium, as a facilitator, as a channel for people to express who they are and be the best
Yeah.
of what they can be. Basically, that's it. And sometimes I am playing that role. In that case of the when we work together, I was your boss, yeah, and yeah, you were working with me. But it happened all the way around as well, huh? In many
Mm.
aspects. Things that I have learned from you, uh, starting from very small things like words in English that I didn't know that I taught me, uh, how to write better, uh, uh, how to
Oh,
have a
funny.
certain critical thinking about topics that I was very very shallow, and that today I know a little bit more. Um, and your value system, your way of leading, your way of building connection with people. So I think there is one. I'm gonna try to find it here. Maybe it just occurred to me. It's actually, I don't know. It's a friend that might be here
Mm.
on this live. I don't know if she's no longer here, but she actually shared that with me. That quote from this guy called Handas. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
So he basically says, together we are all on a journey called life. We are a little broken and a little shattered inside. Each, each one of us is aspiring to make it to the end. None is deprived of pain here, and we have all suffered in our own ways. I think our journey is all about healing ourselves and healing each other in our own special ways. So let's just keep each other, no, help each other, put all those pieces back together and make it to the end more beautifully. So whichever what
Mm.
you believe about life should be, it is a journey. We are all on this together.
Mm.
We are all
Mm.
humans. We are a little broken inside. And I think when I think about leadership, that's perhaps maybe the the role of,
Yeah, and I think it
huh?
starts off with that confession. That's a that it starts off with that confession. The leader must confess that we are all
We are all
broken.
broken.
We all are broken, and we should accept it. And that's the only way we get to go on the same journey. Otherwise, it will be
Yes.
disconnected.
So oh wow, the hour,
Two
huh?
minutes left,
Sorry,
Guy.
2 minutes
2 minutes
left.
left.
The hour went like this. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that this is not going to be the first conversation.
Hmm.
I think many you come because I have learned so many things again with you as usual, as those conversations we had over fish and chips in Honda V. We Gaspa, we Dream, those guys as well that we used to reflect about those things. So maybe I think we could make it almost like a habit because I have learned so much, and I hope that has been useful for the.
Absolutely. Super
And
useful.
then
Yeah, it
maybe
reminds
next
me
time
of
you can
all
tell
the
a little
good
bit
times.
more about what you are up to right now.
Yeah, sure. I think we can talk about that more later. But yeah, just a bit of I've started my own executive leadership consultancy thing, and I've just registered a company by the name of Quiet Thrivers Limited. And the objective is this to give help and facilitate people who kind of want to make an impact without creating
Brilliant.
a fuss.
So that's a nice
That's what it is.
teaser. So we can basically next time talk about it, and you can share more about the ambition and dreams you have.
Will do.
And then I think everyone is suggesting maybe we could meet all here in Paris. I would love that. Having all the gang reunite. Yeah,
That'd be super
yes.
cool.
A reunion.
Round table.
Good.
Great.
Was
Thank you
great
so much,
talking to
Guy.
you once again.
Take
care.
care. Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Everyone joining. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.